Thank you for being with me today. I want to finish reading up on Genesis chapter, the book of Genesis. So I'm going to read through Genesis chapter 47 through to Genesis chapter 50. It's taking me forever to do it, and I thank you for your patience. So either you can go to YouTube, Endtime Church on Facebook, or YouTube is Philadelphia Church in Philadelphia. Then you should be able to see readings. So I must say it's not my best reading, but I did do my best in reading it. And I made a promise. And so, by the grace of God, I'm able to finish this out today and wait for my tablet to come up so I can read from my tablet. Um, so I don't know where I'm going to go from here afterwards. I don't know if I'm going to start. I might do Genesis chapter 1 through 5 or working through parts of the book of Revelation as we have a debate. So, but I do know that I want to get through this today. I pray that everybody's had a good day. Probably good to read it anyway after the Eagles and lost football team. So up until this point, where we are now is that Joseph, who was the son of Jacob, was the confidant, the second in charge of Pharaoh in Egypt. And he was able to, and there was a famine in the land for 14 years. The first 7 years was flourishing, and then after that, the remaining 14 years, it was not flourishing. It wasn't any good. And whereas that they were going to have famine, and God utilized, now it's working. God utilized Joseph to be instrumental in bringing his father and his brethren and their family up to Egypt, which is 66 people, and then he was there with his wife and 2 kids, so it was 70 people that come up to Egypt. And we know, we talked about in chapter 46, established that Jacob is Israel, and everything come pretty much through his seed. And from those 70 people that's going up to Egypt at this time, 420 years from this point, that Moses is going to come into the picture, and then they're going to be free from Egypt. And so this is where the Jews, nation of Israel, is being recognized at this point in time. So, just one moment. Either one phone works right or the other one don't work right. But you got to close it. So, let us begin. So if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to comment me or text me. And if I don't get to it right away, Lord willing, I will get to it. So my motto is, if it's not in the Bible, it's not true, because the Bible said, let God be true and every man a liar. And my study tools are, I use the King James Version Bible, I use the Interlinear Bible, which takes the Greek and the Hebrew in one line as it's written, and then the other line is a direct translation of word. And then I use the Strong's Concordance to interpret those meanings. Doesn't mean that I need to know Greek or Hebrew, just means that it's easy to understand what's being said and to verify the validity of God's word. Anyone can do it. It's just, you can actually go to Bible Gateway and order the books, the Interlinear Bible. It should be more than $20. It's about this thick. Or you can, in the Strong's Concordance, and it's very helpful. So in Genesis chapter 47, Joseph had lied and encouraged his father to lie and say, hey, you know what? They don't feel good about sheep herders there. Tell them that you're dealing with cattle. You know, we spoke about that before, how the sheep pretty much eats up all the ground. They eat down to the bottom of the root, and it just kills it versus, and a lot of cattlemen, and I know this only from looking at a lot of westerns, if you want to use that as a um, reference, but cattlemen did not like sheep herders because of that fact, generally speaking, and plus they always said they were dirty, the the sheep, but that's for sure it did kill the ground that they ate on, as far as compared to what the cattle did. So Genesis 47 said, Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh and said, My father and my brethren and their flocks and their herds and all that they have will come out of the land of Canaan. And behold, they are in the land of Goshen. And he took some of his brethren, even 5 men, and represented them unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto his brethren, What is your occupation? And they said unto Pharaoh, Thy servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. They didn't lie. They just went ahead and told the truth, because when you look at chapter 46, God speaks to Israel / Jacob, because he calls them both, and lets them know that, don't worry, you go up there, your eyes are you're gonna pass, you're gonna die there, but you're gonna flourish, your people are gonna flourish there also. So they say moreover unto Pharaoh, For to sojourn in the land are we come, for thy servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Now therefore we pray thee, let thy servants dwell in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh spake unto Joseph, saying, Thy father and thy brethren are come unto thee. The land of Pharaoh is before thee, and the best of the land make thy father and brethren to dwell. In the land of Goshen let them dwell, and if thou knowest any men of activity among them, then make them rulers over my cattle. And Joseph brought in Jacob his father, and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And I like that, because Jacob was very instrumental in the book of Genesis. If you read it, and you'll see that God used Jacob, I think, more than anybody, more than Adam, more than Noah, more than Abraham. Jacob was very instrumental in a lot of things that took place. His mother had the struggle within her, and she asked God what the struggle was, and God let her know that it's a struggle between two nations, and the latter of the two sons is going to have control over the one son. And then after he came out, his mother already knew which son was going to be in the favor of God. Jacob sold pottage to Esau, and Esau gave up his birthright. And then later on, Jacob tricked his father into getting the official birthright inheritance was given to him. And then he fled his brethren because he was afraid, or they were afraid for his life. And then on his way back to, I believe it was that we dealt with Jacob's ladder. We fell asleep into Jacob's ladder, and he's being told about what the things to come in the future. And God assured him that he was going to be with him. So then once he got there, he fell in love, or at first sight, the woman that he wanted to marry, and he was going to work 7 for her. But at the end of the day, he was tricked by his father-in-law. He got and was given the older of the two. So he worked an additional time period for her. And then in our readings, you'll notice that when the first wife died, the one that he didn't want, he put her in the family plot, the plot that Abraham had. But when the second one died, the one that he wanted, and he ended up working an additional 7 years, he ended up staying there 21 years. When she died, he's going to drop her off on the side of the road. So sometimes we look at someone, they look like Beyonce, or they look like they were made, engraved by the hands of God. And as time goes on, guess what? That's the one that is not as important so that you thought she was, or you thought he was going to be. So a lot of times we need to go prayerful on who we want for to be our our mate. But we'll read on that, and I will point that out when we get to it, Lord willing. So, amidst all that has taken place so far, on his way back, he decides that he's going to go back home, and he is being very thoughtful toward his family. And he has, actually he leaves early. He tricks his father-in-law. He leaves early, and his father-in-law comes after him. But God stops his father-in-law along the path and tells him not to do any harm to him. So after they get over that hurdle, on his way back, he's afraid that he's going to meet up with Esau, which is the Edom. From Esau comes the Edomites, which is his brother, that he tricked. That what, he might kill me. So I'm gonna let everybody go before me, and I'm just going to wait, because let him just take me, but everyone else go. So on the way back, he wrestles with God, and he wouldn't let him go unless he got a blessing, and his blessing is Israel. So Israel is the nation of Israel that's given to him. It's Jacob, but he's like the domino effect too. Whereas that, he's just part of the plan for the bigger picture that God already had in place. So Jacob is not just instrumental now. God actually speaks to him again in chapter 46. He spoke to him. He wrestled with him. He dealt with Jacob's ladder. God spoke to his mother about him. So he has a lot of interface with God up until this point. And then when we get to chapter 49 or chapter 50, you know what he's going to be doing? He's going to be setting down the foundation for every tribe of the 12 tribes of Israel after this. Who they are, and he's going to talk to them as their son, and then he's going to talk to them as a tribe. And we'll see that I believe is in Jacob chapter 49. Not Jacob, Genesis chapter 49. So I'm saying that to say this, and from when I'm reading this, I think he is the most instrumental person. Now, the most critical, maybe not, because Abraham was critical, but God already chose Abraham, and the promise was already made. So it's nothing that Abraham can do. The promise was already put in place. Abraham tried to stray a couple times and go to Pharaoh and lie about his wife being his sister, but God protected him through that regardless, and acknowledged that no matter what happened, God would, even through the death of Isaac, his son, by the sacrifice, when you go to Hebrews, that God would lift him back up again. So God's promise was in place. You can look at Noah. Noah was very instrumental because he stood in the gap for many people. How so? Because God chose him to do something, and if he wouldn't have done it, then he stood in the gap for mankind. You see, he was a type of Christ. He was chosen to build the ark, to go through, as you'll say, a tribulation, go through the flood. And so we can look at Adam. Adam and Eve were instrumental. We go back because of his sin. Because of his sin, we're put into this position today. But God constantly puts us in a position to choose. So it's not just what Adam's choice that was not acceptable. Our choices in our life, we constantly fail when God gives us a choice to serve him or to do our will. Whatever it may be, we're not perfect. So, Adam himself wasn't perfect. He was perfect, but he fell from perfection. And when we're born at the tree of good and evil to make it to the tree of life, which is salvation. So I hope that helps in the reasoning why I think that Joseph is instrumental. So Genesis 47:6 says, "The land of Egypt is before thee, and the best of the land make thy father and brethren to dwell. In the land of Goshen let them dwell, and if thou knowest any men of activity among them, then make them rulers over my cattle." And Joseph brought in Jacob his father, and set him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And I like that. He blessed him. He's going to bless him again too. And Pharaoh said unto Jacob, How old art thou? And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers, and the days of their pilgrimage. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh, and went out from before Pharaoh. And Jacob placed his father and his brethren, and gave them a permission in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. And Joseph nourished his father and his brother and all his father's household with bread according to their families. And there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the corn which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, Give us bread, for why should we die in the presence? For the money failed. Right, that's important too. Even the bread, it's not this white bread we eat. This bread had the grain. The grain that they saved is the grain that they made the bread with, and it was in that grain. So the bread had substance to it, had life in it, and this bread was important. And there's no way today that someone's going to say, "Hey, give me that bread." You're going to be looking for some other food. That bread, the Wonder Bread, is not going to sustain you. At least not most of it anyway. But not like it wasn't made in the same manner that this food was made at that particular time. And they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses, and for the flocks, and for the cattle of the herds, and for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. He's building Egypt. Egypt's becoming powerful, and God put Joseph in the position that even though Egypt was not a kingdom that God revealed himself to them, he didn't reveal himself to them. He revealed himself to Joseph. He wanted a peculiar people. And when we move on in Exodus, he's going to identify it. So when we're dealing with Egypt, God allowed a man that was not part of their culture to lead them. So us as Christians, we can learn from this instead of putting up a wall of defense against someone that says that they're not a Christian. Then we can understand that, we work with one another. We're still supposed to be fishers of men. And God utilized Joseph to show us an example, Because Joseph said, oh, you know what? I have nothing to do with Egyptians. He went off in the land, and guess what? It wouldn't have happened. But God got the right person that was going to be obedient to what he wanted to do, to his will, not thy will, not serving God on their terms, on how they want to interpret serving God. But God utilized Joseph not just to save his family, but to save a nation, to save a community, to save a region. You see, and then business comes into place. We go back and we read further back. One thing that we do see is that, guess what? They are becoming powerful because the people have something they want, and they're using it to their best assets. They're getting their horses, they're getting their flocks, they're getting the cattle herds. The clergymen at that time didn't have to pay taxes. They weren't taxed, but they weren't even Christian or Jews, because Jews didn't even come into effect after that. The pastors or the clergymen they're speaking to at this time are Egyptians. They're Egyptian clergymen. And they brought their cattle to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses, and for the flocks, and for the cattle of the herds, and for the asses. And he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. And when that year was ended, they came unto him the second year. And he said unto him, We will not hide it from my Lord, how that our money is spent. My Lord also has our herds of cattle, there is not aught left in the sight of my Lord but our bodies and our lands. They're starting government. They are starting what government does. They're going to own the land. They got your cattle. You can work it off, share crop, whatever you're doing. This is what's taking place here. Wherefore shall we die before thy eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh. And give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land not desolate. So they're basically saying, you know what? You got everything. We'll work it. Because if we don't work it, it's going to go desolate. So let us go ahead and let us work the land. And it's yours, but give us food and seed, and, we'll call it a day. We're still being sustained. The people came to them and said this. They didn't come to the people. And Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. For the Egyptians sold every man his field, because the famine prevailed over them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he removed them to cities, and from one end of the border of Egypt even to the other end thereof. Only the land of the priests bought he not, for the priests had a portion assigned them of Pharaoh, and did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them, wherefore they sold not their lands. So that's the first 401c. That's the first nonprofit. And it shall come to pass in the increase that ye shall give the fifth part unto Pharaoh, 20%, and 4 parts shall be your own, for seed of the field, and for your food, and for them of your households, and for food for your little one. Taxation is taking place. It wasn't there before, but it's there now. And they said, thou hast saved our lives. We're jumping and raving, and I want my 20%, but based on dire situations, let us find grace in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants. And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt unto this day, that Pharaoh should have the fifth part, except the land of the priest only, which became not Pharaoh's. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in this country of Goshen. And they had possessions therein, and grew, and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the whole age of Jacob was 147 years. And the time drew nigh that Israel must die. Who is Israel? Israel's Jacob. And time drew nigh that Israel must die. And he called his son Joseph, and said unto him, if now I have found grace in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me. Bury me not, I pray thee, in Egypt. So he doesn't want to be buried in Egypt. You know why? Because that's part of what God already told him, and part of the plot that Abraham already made. But I will lie with my fathers, and thou shalt carry me out of Egypt, and bury me in their burying place. And he said, I will do as thou hast said. And he said, swear unto me. And he swore unto him, and Israel bowed himself upon the bed's head. Israel is Jacob. Genesis chapter 48. And it came to pass after these things, that one told Joseph, behold, thy father is sick. And he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Now, these are the two sons of Joseph. These are the sons that Joseph had before he met his father again, after his father thought that he was killed because he was sold into slavery by his brother. And these 2 boys were born in Egypt. And one told Jacob and said, behold, thy son Joseph cometh unto thee. And Israel straightened himself and sat upon the bed. And Jacob said unto Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, and said unto me, behold, I will make thee fruitful, and multiply thee, and I will make of thee a multitude of people, and will give this land to thy seed after thee for an everlasting possession. So I want to give it to you an everlasting possession. All right, so well, I can get into, I guess, the political part as we see it today, and say, why are we reading about Genesis? Because Genesis is the foundation for the rest of the Bible. When you read and you understand Genesis, you understand who Israel's fighting against. And some of those people they fought against are their family members. The Edom comes from Jacob's brother, the Edomites. So when a lot of times when they're fighting, the Ishmaelites, that's Isaac's brother. All right, and when they fight with Jericho, and Jericho kind of saves them, and then they say, "We want to follow you, Jericho." Jericho said, "No, don't follow me. Follow my God." In other words, that tells you they're not serve God, same God. So the Ishmaelites have to convert over to be to be Israelites, which are proselyte Jews. They have to convert over to be proselyte Jews. But keep in mind too, when you read through Genesis, now Israel doesn't come in place until Jacob, but the region that they moved into, the region that Abraham came to, which is the promised land later on, because it has not 430 something years or 470 years later, then that region that Abraham's in, it will later on become the promised land. But you have the Canaanites there, you have the Edomites there, and when you look at Abraham and Abraham had two wives, all right, and after Sarah died, he had more children, but God made sure that Isaac was separate from them. These are the people too that they're going to fight against, and the Canaanites come from Noah's son that's seen his nudity, and his son Canaan, his grandson was how would you say it, was cursed. He was, and that was Noah. So when you read in the Bible about the Canaanites, it's different than when you read everybody else's genealogies. It said Paul, this person begot that person and that person. But when you read about the Canaanites, they begot civilizations. Canaanites begot the Perizzites and the Hittites, all that. You go back and you read, these are the people they're fighting against later on in the Bible. The Israelites are fighting against later on in the Bible because they're coming back to get something that is like, this is ours. We don't know who you are, Israel. This is ours, you see. But, when they come back after the 40 years when they're not supposed to come back, those people understood, and they understood what God had done for Israel by parting the Red Sea, and they were actually fearful of the Jews, but the Jews were not trusting God, that God was able. But to get back to where we were, I do digress. So Genesis chapter 48:4 says, and said unto me, behold, I will make thee fruitful and multiply thee, and I will make of thee a multitude of people, and will give this land to thy seed after thee for an everlasting possession. And now thy two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which was born unto thee in the land of Egypt before I came unto thee into Egypt, are mine, as Reuben and Simon, they shall be mine. So, he's saying, hey, they were born unto me. And this is Jacob talking before I came here. So, now, and as thy issue, which thou begettest after them, shall be thine, and shall be called after the name of their brethren in their inheritance. So, he also is stating that Reuben and Simon are his, but he's treating, even though they're his grandkids, he's treating them as they're his. All right, they're my grandkids, but they're mine. And, but he's being specific, because sometimes when we go back in Abraham, they talk about their children too. They're talking about their children, which includes their grandchildren, great-grandchildren. He'll call them their children. But right here, Jacob is being specific on Ephraim and Manasseh. So when you go through and you read about the following the heritage of Ephraim and Manasseh, you have to keep this in mind, because they are spoken again in the Bible, in the Old Testament. And that in thy issue, which thou begettest after them, shall be thine, and shall be called after the name of their brethren and their inheritance. And as for me, when I came from Paddan, Rachel died by in the land of Canaan in the way, when yet there was but a little way to go unto Ephraim. And I buried her there in the way of Ephraim, the same as Bethlehem. So he buried Rachel there. But this other wife, she went to the family plot. This is it. He doesn't speak much about her after the fact, but he's letting you know that he buried her there in the way of Ephraim. And Israel beheld Joseph's sons. And who's Israel? Israel's the nation. He's the man, but he's also the nation. And as we read this, this is what makes this so enlightening to me. And Israel beheld Joseph's sons and said, who are these? And Joseph said unto his father, they are my sons whom God hath given me in this place. And he said, bring them, I pray thee, unto me, and I will bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were dim for age, so that he could not see, and he brought them near unto him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said unto Joseph, I had not thought to see thy face, and lo, God has showed me also thy seed. So he's speaking about what? When he thought his son was dead, he didn't expect to see him, but now he's seen his son plus his children. And Joseph brought them out from between his knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near unto him. And Israel stretched out his right hand, and laid it upon Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and he left in his left hand upon Manasseh's head. So Manasseh, so he kind of like crossed his hands, because Manasseh was toward Israel's right hand, but yet when he stretched out his right hand, he laid it upon Ephraim's head, and Ephraim was on his side. So he kind of like crossed his hands over when he touched the head, who was the younger, and he in his left hand upon Manasseh's head, guiding his hand willingly, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, God, before whom my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, did walk, the God which fed me all my life long unto this day, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the last, and let my name be named on them, in the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. He's blessing them before he even blesses his own kids. And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and he held up his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head unto Manasseh's head. And Joseph said unto his father, not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Put thy right hand upon his head. Now remember, take this into as a train of thought. Jacob, which is Isaac, he was what? The secondborn. He was the secondborn. And he got the blessing as if he was the first. And his father refused and said, I know it, my son. I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. So, and he blessed them that day, saying, in thee shall Israel bless, saying, God make thee as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said unto Joseph, behold, I die, but God shall be with you, and bring you again into the land of your fathers. And he let him know, I'm going to die, but God's still going to be with you. And he's going to bring you to the land of your fathers, which is, as we know, back to where they left. But he didn't say when or how long it's going to take. But we know in hindsight it didn't happen the very next day. Moreover, I have given to thee one portion above thy brethren, which I took out of the land, which I took out of the hand of the Amorite with my sword and with my bow. So Genesis chapter 49 is a very important chapter for the tribes of Israel, because now this is setting the tone of the identity of the tribes of Israel. So when we read about the tribes of Israel, you can go back to Genesis chapter 49 to find out their personality and who they're like and why they're like a certain way. Because Israel, which is Jacob, is going to address this. And God has given him the power. I mean, when I look at this, he gave Adam the power to name all the animals. He gave Jacob the power to identify the strengths and the weaknesses of the tribes by his son's characters. God blessed him. God gave him this ability to do this. So up until this time, they didn't know the name of Jehovah. The only thing they know, and the reason why, when you go into Exodus, when Moses is speaking, God's going to reveal himself to him. Because all they ever knew was the father of Abraham, the father of Isaac, and the father of Jacob. They didn't know anything else. They didn't know there was no Ishmael, there was no Edom, Esau, the father of them. They had to convert over. Their kids had to convert over to this. So, but you just hear the father Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob up until 400 and whenever Moses come onto the scene and God deals with them. So, and Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Come and talk to me. These lovely kids he already had, and they conspired against him and lying to him about telling him their son was dead after they took him and sold him off to slavery, after they even thought about killing him. Because they were jealous because he was just giving them facts. And that's what's going to happen. You give spiritual facts to people, they're not going to always like it. God's word don't come back void. I just lay it out there. I don't have to be nasty and stuff like that. People just not going to take it. They're not going to see it. This is my reading glasses. But you think, I keep them with me everywhere. I got about 5 pair of these things all over the place. So he's going to talk to them. We got 2 more chapters to go. Gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. Think about that. Israel and Jacob's the same person. So he's talking in 2 different forms at the same time. He says, gather yourselves together and hear. Listen now, ye sons of Jacob. Jacob, you're the son of Jacob, but Israel is your father. He said, you're the son of Jacob, but Israel is your father. I don't know what that is. Messing up my stuff. I'm gonna wait for a minute. I'm gonna go for a minute. You're just going to wait. Pause. Give me a moment. So we're on Genesis chapter 49, verses 2. I apologize. Gather yourselves together and hear, your sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, in the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. So he's letting them know who Reuben is. You're my firstborn. So he's letting them know that you're the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. And he's also saying, you are as unstable as water, thou shalt not excel. Because thou wentest up into thy father's bed, then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch. He has sex with his wife, his woman. Simon and Levi are brethren, instruments of purity in their habitations. All right, they did something that they felt like they needed to protect their sister because she was raped. And they went through and they tricked a group of people, and they basically destroyed them. O my soul, come not thou into this their secret, into their assembly. And this reminds me, at the judgment seat, all our sins are going to be brought to us. Genesis 49:6. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, into their assembly. My honor be not thou united, for in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they dig down a wall. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thy enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Remember Judah. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? The sepulchre shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, into Shiloh come. Unto him shall the gathering of the people be, binding his fowl unto the vine, and his ass's coat into the choicest vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. Zebulun shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for a haven of ships, and his border shall be unto Zidon. Issachar is a strong ass, couching down between two burdens. And he saw that rest was good in the land, that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulders to bear, and became a servant unto tribute. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an otter in the path that biteth the horse heels, so that his rider shall fall backwards. I have waited for the salvation, O Lord. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. Out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. Naphtali is a hind let loose. He giveth goodly words. Joseph is a fruitful ball, even a fruitful ball for a well, whose branches run over the wall. The archers have sorely grieved him, and shot at him, and hated him. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. Even by the God of thy father who shall help thee, and by the Almighty who shall bless thee with blessings of heaven alone, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breast and of the womb. The blessings of the Father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors. Unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills they shall be of the head of Joseph, and of the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. Benjamin shall rave in as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is it that their father spake unto them, and blessed them, every one according to his blessings. He blessed them, and he charged them. Why is this thing giving me problems today? I don't get it. I really don't get it. I'll finish here. It's fine. And he charged them and said unto them, I am to be gathered unto my people. Bury me with my father in the cave that is in the field of Ephraim the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephraim the Hittite for possession of a burying place. There they bury Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they bury Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. So they didn't bury his second wife. She didn't. They left her by the side of the road, as I said. They could have buried her there, but he's letting them know where he wanted to be buried, and he didn't say bring Rebecca or what. Let me go back and look at that real quick. Chapter 48. I've been terrible with names of late, to be honest about it. My daughter's been correcting me. Rachel. He 48:7 says, and as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died by me in the land of Canaan in the way, when yet there was but a little way to come unto Ephrath. And I buried her there in the way of Ephrath, the same in Bethlehem. Now we go to chapter 49. He's talking about the family plot, but they're not going back to dig her up. They didn't go and make efforts to take her, to bury her at that point in time. Back at the family plot when she died, she wasn't part of the plan. So when we look at 49 verses 32, I read back to 48. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife. And there I buried Leah as his wife. The purchase of the field and the cave that is therein was from the children of Heth. And when Jacob had made an end of commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet into the bed and yielded up the ghost, and was gathered into his people. And Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept upon him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel. They preserved him. And 40 days was fulfilled for him. For so are fulfilled the days of those which are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. So they mourned for him for 70 days. And when the days of his mourning was past, Joseph spake unto the house of Pharaoh, saying, Now I have found grace in your eyes. Speak, I pray you, in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, Lo, I die in the grave which I have digged for me in the land of Canaan. There shalt thou bury me. Now therefore let me go up, I pray thee, and bury my father, and I will come again. And Pharaoh said, Go up and bury thy father, and according as he has made thee swear. And Joseph went up to bury his father, and went with him, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, and all the house of Joseph, and his brethren, and his father's house, only their little ones, and their flocks, and their herds, they left in the land of Goshen. And they went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great company. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond Jordan. And there they mourned with a great and very sore lamentation. And he made a mourning for his father 7 days. And when the habitations of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning in the floor of Adad, they said, "This is a grievous mourning to the Egyptians." Wherefore the name of it was called Abel Mizraim, which is beyond Jordan. And his sons did unto him according as he commanded them. For his sons carried him into the land of Canaan, and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, which Abraham bought with the field for a possession of a burying place of Ephraim the Hittite before Mamre. And Joseph returned into Egypt, he and his brethren, and all that went up with him to bury his father, after he had buried his father. And when Joseph's brethren saw that their father was dead, they said, "Joseph will peradventure hate us, and will certainly requite with us all the evil which we did unto him." And they sent a messenger unto Joseph, saying, "Thy father did command before he died, saying, So shall ye say unto Joseph, Forgive, I pray thee now, the trespass of thy brethren and their sin, for they did unto thee evil. And now we pray thee, forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of thy father." And Joseph wept when they spake unto him. And his brethren also went and fell down before his face. And they said, "Behold, we be thy servants." They fell down a second time, after he had said when he was a child that they were going to do it. And they got mad at him. And Joseph said unto them, "Fear not, for I in the place, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive. Now therefore fear ye not, I will nourish you and your little ones." And he comforted them and spake calmly unto them. And Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's house. And Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation, the children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, was brought up upon Joseph's knees. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I die, and God will surely visit you, and bring you out of this land into the land which he sware to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones from hence. So Joseph died, being 110 years, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. I thank you for your patience in the reading of his word.